You see, most people spend their entire lives bracing for the storm or praying for the sunshine, but nobody prepares you for the fog. There is a specific quiet season in a human life where nothing is necessarily going wrong. Your bills are paid, your health is holding up, and your neighbors might even envy your stability, yet absolutely nothing feels right. It is that strange, hollow territory where the motivational tapes stop working, the old goals have lost their luster, and the very fire that used to drive you out of bed at 5 in the morning has turned into a pile of cold, gray ash. I remember sitting in my small car years ago, looking at my bank account and then at my reflection in the window, realizing that I wasn't failing in the eyes of the world, but I was dying in my own. We are taught how to handle the winter of despair and how to celebrate the harvest of success, but we are never taught how to survive the plateau where the soul goes silent. This is the season that no one markets to you because there are no easy slogans for a man who has everything but feels like he has nothing. It is a dangerous middle ground where you aren't depressed enough to quit, but you aren't inspired enough to truly live. Before we go any further, I want to ask you a question that might be uncomfortable to answer in the light of day. Are you currently drifting through a life that looks good on paper but feels like an empty room in your heart? The transition from being a striver to being a settler is often so subtle that you don't even notice the moment the change occurs. Most people believe that life is a simple graph of ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but they miss the most treacherous terrain of all, which is the flatland. We have thousands of books telling us how to climb the mountain and just as many telling us how to survive the crash at the bottom, but there is almost no literature for the person who is standing on a vast gray plateau where the air is thin and the scenery never changes. This is the thesis of the quiet season. It is the understanding that your greatest enemy isn't failure, but a comfortable, numbing adequacy. Most of the world lives in a state of quiet desperation, but they do so because they have accepted a version of life that is just good enough to keep them from complaining, yet not nearly good enough to make them feel alive. We see the masses chasing the next high, the next purchase, or the next distraction because they are terrified of the stillness that we are talking about today. They think that if the music stops, their life is over. But the architect of a truly great life knows that the silence is where the real design happens. When you look at the design of a great cathedral or a massive skyscraper, there is a period in the construction where it seems like nothing is happening. The hole has been dug, the foundation has been poured, and for months or even years the passers-by see no visible progress. They walk by and shake their heads, saying that the project has stalled or that the vision was too big to be realized. But deep underground, away from the prying eyes of the critics, the most important work is being done. The steel is being reinforced. The weight-bearing structures are being tested. The architect isn't worried that the building isn't rising yet because he knows the depth of the foundation determines the height of the tower. Many of you are in that foundation stage right now, but you are mistaking it for a dead end. You feel like you are standing still while the rest of the world is rushing past you. But there is a profound difference between being stuck and being in preparation. The majority of people cannot handle this distinction. They want the facade, they want the glass and the lights, and when those things don't appear immediately, they abandon the site and go look for something easier to build. To design a life of substance, you must become comfortable with the seasons that don't produce a harvest. We are a culture obsessed with the harvest. We want to be reaping every single day of the year. But if you study the laws of nature, the laws that govern the stars and the soil, you will see that nature requires the fallow period. The ground must rest. The trees must shed their leaves and stand naked against the cold, looking for all the world like they are dead. But they aren't dead, they are gathering strength. They are pulling their resources back to the core. If a tree tried to bloom all year round, it would exhaust its nutrients and die within a few seasons. The quiet season is not a mistake in the design of your life. It is a requirement for your survival. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that if we aren't producing, we aren't valuable. We have tied our worth to our output, and so when the output slows down, our self-esteem vanishes. We start to panic. We start to look for shortcuts. We start to listen to the voices of the average who tell us to just be grateful for what we have and stop dreaming of something more. The successful man or woman looks at this plateau and asks a different set of questions. They don't ask why nothing is happening. They ask what they are being prepared for. They realize that this is the time to audit the internal machinery. If the external world has gone quiet, it is a signal to turn the volume up on the internal world. Most people are so busy reacting to the noise of their problems that they never take the time to look at the philosophy that created the problems in the first place. They are like a captain who is so busy pumping water out of a sinking ship that he never stops to find the hole in the hull. The quiet season is your opportunity to find the hole. It is the time to look at your habits, your associations, and your language with a cold, objective eye. It is the time to ask yourself if the person you have become is actually capable of handling the success you claim to want. Because here is a sobering thought. Maybe you haven't reached the next level because the current version of you would be crushed by the weight of it. Design is not just about what you add to your life, it is often about what you have the courage to remove. In the busy seasons, we pick up a lot of clutter, we pick up obligations we don't like, friends who drain our energy, and beliefs that limit our potential. We are moving so fast that we don't notice the extra weight. But when you hit the plateau, when the momentum stops, that weight becomes unbearable. You start to feel the drag. This is the season where the architect looks at the blueprints and realizes that certain wings of the building no longer serve the ultimate purpose. It is a time for pruning. It is a time for a radical honesty that the majority will never understand. They will call you cold, or they will say you've changed, or they will wonder why you aren't satisfied with the good life you've built. But you aren't looking for a good life. You are looking for a life that is true to the design you envisioned when you were at your best. The danger of this season is that it feels like a void, and the human mind hates a void. We want to fill it with anything just to escape the feeling of emptiness. This is why people go back to old habits, or stay in dead relationships, or take jobs they hate, just to feel some kind of friction against the world. They would rather have the pain of a struggle they know than the uncertainty of a silence they don't. But I am asking you to hold the line. I am asking you to stay in the silence until it starts to speak to you. Don't rush to fill the gap with cheap motivation or temporary distractions. If you can master the art of being still without becoming stagnant, you will find a level of power that the restless masses will never know. You will find that the quiet isn't your enemy. It is your laboratory. It is the place where the new version of you is being forged, away from the heat of the spotlight. We must understand that there is a rhythm to greatness, and that rhythm includes the pause. If a composer wrote a piece of music with nothing but notes and no rests, it wouldn't be music, it would be noise. The beauty, the tension, and the emotion of the symphony are created by the space between the notes. Your life is currently in a rest period, but the symphony isn't over. The conductor hasn't left the stage, he is simply waiting for the right moment to bring the strings back in. But the question is, while you are waiting for the music to start again, are you maintaining your instrument, or are you letting the strings go out of tune because you think no one is listening? Are you preparing for the next movement, or have you already decided that the concert is over? I remember a time when I thought I had finally figured it all out. I was no longer the confused young man I once was, and I had started to see the first real fruits of my labor. I was working with Mr. Earl Shoaff, and for those of you who don't know, he was the man who completely rearranged my mental furniture. At this point in my life, I was involved in what we called the shaker days, selling nutritional supplements and building a small organization. I was making more money than I ever had. I had a decent car, and I was finally able to provide for my family without the constant weight of worry on my shoulders. By any external measure, I was a success story in the making. But as I sat in a hotel coffee shop with Mr. Shoaff one evening after a long day of meetings, he looked at me with those piercing eyes of his, eyes that could see right through a man's excuses, and he asked me a question that stopped my heart. He didn't ask about my sales volume or my bank balance. He looked at me and said, "Jim, when was the last time you felt truly challenged by the person you see in the mirror?" That question hit me like a physical blow. I tried to give him the usual answers, talking about the long hours I was putting in and the miles I was driving across the country to speak to small groups of people. I told him about the new distributors I was training and the goals I had written down in my journal. But he just sat there, stirring his coffee, letting the silence between us grow until it felt heavy enough to crush me. He waited until I ran out of things to say, until my defensive chatter died down and I was forced to face the reality of the situation. He finally said, "Jim, you've reached a very dangerous place. You've reached the place where your current skills are sufficient to maintain your current lifestyle. You aren't struggling, but you aren't growing. You've entered the quiet season, and you're mistaking your comfort for completion. You're playing the game well enough not to lose, but you've forgotten what it feels like to play to win. I felt a wave of intense shame wash over me in that moment. It was a peculiar kind of shame, not the kind you feel when you fail, but the kind you feel when you realize you've been settling for a smaller version of yourself. I realized that for the last 6 months, I had been going through the motions. I was saying the right words, wearing the right suit, and following the right routines, but the fire had gone out. I was on a plateau, and because it was a comfortable plateau, I hadn't even noticed that I had stopped climbing. I had become a professional at being fine. I was maintaining a life that was acceptable, but I had abandoned the pursuit of a life that was exceptional. Mr. Shoaff told me that evening that the most difficult part of the journey isn't the steep climb at the beginning, but the long, flat stretches in the middle where the scenery doesn't change and the applause of the crowd fades away. He explained to me that many people die on that plateau. They don't die physically, of course, but their spirit withers. They become the walking wounded of the business world, people who have enough to be comfortable, but not enough to be inspired. He called it the season of the silent soul. He told me that this was the time when a man's true character is revealed, not when he is fighting for his life, but when he is deciding whether or not to keep fighting when he already has enough. I spent that night walking the streets of that city, unable to sleep, feeling the weight of my own stagnation. I realized that I had been hiding behind my busyness. I was so busy doing the work that I didn't have to do the thinking. I was using my activity as an anesthetic to numb the feeling that I was drifting away from my ultimate potential. It was a humbling realization to admit that I had become complacent. I had to admit that I was scared to leave the safety of what I knew how to do. I was scared to set a goal that I might actually fail at. So I kept setting goals that I knew I could reach with a little bit of effort. I was protecting my ego instead of expanding my horizon. That night, I had to make a choice. I could continue to live this comfortable, quiet life where nothing was wrong but nothing was truly right, or I could embrace the discomfort of a new beginning. I had to learn how to be a student again, to look at my business and my life with the eyes of a beginner. I had to realize that the skills that got me to the plateau were not the skills that would get me off of it. This lesson from Mr. Shoaff is something I've carried with me for decades, and it's the reason I'm speaking to you like this today. We often think that the quiet season is a sign that we've made it, but in reality, it's the ultimate test of our ambition. It is the time when the external world stops giving you feedback and you have to find the feedback within yourself. It's the time when you have to decide if you are a person of substance or just a person of circumstances. If the circumstances are good, you're good. But if the circumstances are stagnant, do you have the internal drive to create your own momentum? Most people don't. Most people wait for a crisis to wake them up. They wait for the heart attack, the divorce, or the bankruptcy to force them into action. But the wise person learns to hear the whisper of the quiet season before it becomes a scream. I'll leave a few moments of quiet at the end of this video for you to really sit with these thoughts, because this isn't something you can process while you're checking your emails or thinking about what to have for dinner. You need to look at your life with the same cold, honest gaze that Mr. Shoaff directed at me that night in the coffee shop. You need to ask yourself if you are actually moving forward or if you are just vibrating in place. There is a profound difference between the two. One leads to a legacy, and the other leads to a life of what if. I don't want you to wake up 10 years from now and realize that you spent a decade on a plateau because you were too afraid to admit that you were bored. The shame I felt that night was a gift. It was the friction I needed to start the fire again. It was the realization that I was drifting that allowed me to grab the oars and start rowing. If you feel a sense of unease right now as you listen to my voice, if you feel a little bit of that shame or that restlessness, don't push it away. Don't try to drown it out with more motivation. That feeling is your soul trying to tell you that it's time to move. It's time to stop being a settler and start being a pioneer again. It's time to look at the good enough life you've built and ask yourself if it's really the life you dreamed of when you started this journey. Because the truth is, the quiet season doesn't last forever. It either leads to a new peak or a slow, agonizing slide into irrelevance. The choice of which direction you go is entirely up to you, but you have to make that choice in the silence, away from the noise of the world. Are you brave enough to admit that you've been standing still? To understand why you feel this way, you must understand the immutable law of the seasons. Most people are familiar with the obvious ones. They know the spring is for opportunity, the summer is for protection, and the autumn is for the harvest. They even understand the winter of a crisis, when the pipes freeze and the world turns cold. But there is a season that exists in the cracks between the others, a season that the great masters of life have always known about, but rarely talked about in the marketplace. I call it the fallow season. In agriculture, a farmer will sometimes leave a field unplanted for a year. To the uneducated eye, that field looks like a failure. It looks like wasted space, a place where weeds grow and nothing of value is being produced. But the farmer knows that the soil is exhausted. It has given everything it had to the previous harvests, and if he forces it to produce again without rest, the crop will be thin and the soil will eventually turn to dust. Your life is no different than that field. You have been producing, you have been striving, and you have been pushing for so long that your internal soil has become depleted. The reason your motivation has stopped working is not because you have lost your edge, but because your soul is demanding a period of restoration. The problem we face in our modern world is that we have declared war on the rhythm of nature. We want to live in a perpetual summer. We want the lights on 24 hours a day. We want information at our fingertips in seconds, and we want our progress to be a straight line pointing forever upward. But look at the stars, look at the tides, look at the very breath in your lungs. Everything that is alive must have a period of contraction before it can expand again. If you try to bypass the quiet season, you are essentially trying to build a tower without letting the concrete dry. You might get a few more floors up, but the cracks will eventually appear and the collapse will be far more devastating than a temporary pause ever would have been. You see, the majority of people are terrified of the pause because they have no inner life to sustain them when the outer world goes quiet. They are like a radio that can only receive signals but can't generate its own music. When the signal fades, all they hear is static, and that static drives them to distraction, to vice, or to a state of constant low-level anxiety. I want you to consider the set of your sail. We all know that the wind blows on us all. The wind of change, the wind of opportunity, the wind of economic shifts. It blows on the seeker and the settler alike. What determines where you end up is not the blowing of the wind, but the setting of the sail. In the quiet season, the wind often seems to die down completely. You're out on the water, the surface is like glass, and your boat isn't moving an inch. This is where most people give up. They start cursing the wind, they blame the ocean, they think their boat is broken, but the professional, the person of true philosophy, uses this time to trim the sail. They check the ropes for fraying, they polish the wood, they study the charts, they realize that the wind will inevitably return. It always has, and it always will, and when it does, they want to be the ones whose sails are perfectly positioned to catch every ounce of that energy. If you spend your quiet season complaining about the lack of wind, you'll be so exhausted and bitter when the breeze finally picks up that you won't have the strength to steer. The law of sowing and reaping is also misunderstood in this season. We are told that if we sow, we shall reap, and that is true. But there is a forgotten middle part to that law. You must wait. Between the planting and the harvest, there is a period of total invisibility. You put the seed in the ground, you cover it with dirt, and for a long time nothing happens. If you were to dig that seed up every day to see if it was growing, you would kill it. The quiet season is the time when the seed is struggling underground, it is breaking out of its shell, it is sending roots down deep so that it can eventually support the weight of the stalk. You are currently in the underground phase of your next great expansion. You feel like you are in the dark, you feel the weight of the earth pressing down on you, and you feel like you aren't getting anywhere. But the truth is that you are doing the most vital work of your life. You are developing the root system. A person who has a massive harvest without a deep root system is a person who will be destroyed by the first storm that comes along. Do not resent the dark, and do not resent the waiting. The soil is doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. We must also talk about the discipline of the mind during these times. It is easy to be disciplined when the checks are rolling in and the people are cheering. It is easy to be positive when everything is going your way. But the real test of your philosophy is what you do when the results stop coming. Do you still get up and study? Do you still treat people with kindness? Do you still keep your promises to yourself when there is no immediate reward for doing so? The quiet season is a filter. It filters out the pretenders and the short-term thinkers. It keeps the average in their place while it prepares the exceptional for their next leap. You must learn to guard your mind during this time more than any other. The weeds of doubt and the thorns of cynicism love to grow in a quiet field. You have to be the gardener of your own spirit, pulling out those negative thoughts before they take root and choke out your future. You have to learn to talk to yourself rather than listen to yourself. If you listen to yourself, you will hear all the fears and all the complaints of the majority. But if you talk to yourself, you can remind yourself of the laws, the seasons, and the promises of the harvest. It takes a tremendous amount of character to be still. Our society views stillness as laziness, but I tell you that purposeful stillness is one of the highest forms of human activity. It is the activity of the observer, the thinker, and the architect. In this quiet season, your job is not to force the harvest, but to become the kind of person who is worthy of the harvest. If you want more, you must be more. And you cannot be more if you are constantly running, constantly reacting, and constantly trying to escape the silence. You have to go into the silence, sit with it, and let it burn away the parts of you that are no longer useful. Let it burn away the arrogance, the shallow goals, and the need for constant validation. What is left after that fire is the true gold of your character. This is the lessons Jim Rohn never marketed part of the story because it's hard to sell a program on how to sit in a room and be honest with yourself. It's much easier to sell a program on 10 steps to $1 million, but the $1 million will never stay with a man who hasn't mastered the silence of the plateau. So I want you to look at this season not as a delay, but as a divine appointment. You aren't being punished, you are being prepared. You aren't losing time, you are gaining depth. The question is, can you trust the process enough to stop fighting the stillness? Can you be brave enough to admit that you need this rest, even if the rest of the world is telling you to keep grinding? The seasons have never failed a man who understood them, and they won't start failing you now. But you must play your part. You must be the student of the silence. You must be the keeper of the vision when the vision is all you have. As we move closer to the end of this talk, I want you to start preparing your heart for that time of reflection I mentioned earlier. Don't look for the exit. Don't look for the next video. Look inward, because the most important conversation you will have today isn't with me. It's with the person you've been avoiding in the quiet. Have you ever considered that the silence you're so afraid of is actually the only place where the answers you're looking for can be heard? Now we come to the part that most people try to avoid, and it is the part where we must stop being spectators of our own lives and start becoming the investigators. I remember my time working as a stock clerk at Sears. It was a respectable job for a young man, and it provided a steady paycheck, but I remember walking through those aisles of hardware and clothing, looking at the people around me and realizing that most of us were just stocking the shelves of someone else's dream while our own lives were tucked away in cardboard boxes in the basement of our souls. We were in a quiet season, but it wasn't a season of preparation. It was a season of sleepwalking. I want to challenge you today to find out which one you are in. It is time for a mental audit, a cold and honest look at the ledger of your life. We have to ask the questions that make us want to turn off the video and go back to our distractions. But if you want to leave the plateau, you have to be willing to look at the map and admit that you are lost. The first question I want to put to your conscience is this: who are you spending your time with in this quiet season? You see, the silence has a way of magnifying the voices of the people around us. When the wind is blowing and you're busy winning, you might not notice that your inner circle is made up of people who have no destination of their own. But when things slow down, their influence becomes your atmosphere. Are you surrounded by people who find comfort in your lack of progress because it makes them feel better about their own stagnation? Are you associating with people who confuse your quiet season with a permanent retirement from greatness? You cannot expect to catch a new wind if you are anchored to people who are afraid of the open sea. I want you to look at your 5 closest associations and ask yourself if they are sharpening your mind or just helping you pass the time. Time is the one thing you cannot get more of, and if you are spending it with people who have nothing to offer but complaints and diversions, you are committing a slow form of spiritual suicide. The second part of this audit concerns your library. What have you read in the last 90 days that has challenged the way you think? Most people have a quiet season in their library that has lasted for years. They stopped learning the day they walked across the stage at graduation, and they wonder why their life feels like a repetitive loop. If you are standing still, it is likely because your philosophy has reached its limit. You cannot solve a new problem with the same level of thinking that created the problem in the first place. Are you feeding your mind with the thoughts of the masters, or are you just consuming the digital crumbs that fall off the table of the 24-hour news cycle? If you want the silence to speak to you, you have to give it a vocabulary. You have to fill your mind with the ideas, the histories, and the principles that have guided successful men and women through their own quiet seasons. If your library is empty, your future will be empty too. The third and perhaps most difficult question is about the promises you make to yourself. In the busy seasons, it's easy to keep your word because the world is watching. You have deadlines, you have clients, you have the pressure of the marketplace. But what happens when the world isn't looking? What happens in the quiet, when it's just you and your own reflection? Did you say you were going to walk for 30 minutes today and then decided not to because it doesn't really matter? Did you say you were going to spend an hour studying a new skill but ended up spending that hour scrolling through photos of people you don't even like? Every time you break a promise to yourself, you erode your self-confidence. You tell your subconscious mind that your word is worth nothing. And when your word is worth nothing, you lose the power to command your own destiny. You become a leaf in the wind instead of the captain of the ship. The quiet season is the ultimate test of your integrity because it asks if you can be a person of character when there is no one there to applaud you. I want you to think back to those cold Idaho winters I knew as a boy on the farm. In the winter, you couldn't plow, you couldn't plant, and you couldn't harvest. But that didn't mean there was no work to be done. The successful farmer spent those quiet months in the barn. He sharpened the blades of the plow, he repaired the harnesses, he took care of the equipment that he knew he would need the moment the first thaw arrived. He didn't sit by the fire and complain about the snow. He used the snow as a shield that gave him the privacy to prepare. Are you sharpening your tools right now, or are you letting them rust in the rain? If the opportunity you've been praying for arrived tomorrow morning, would you be ready to handle it? Or would your equipment break under the strain because you neglected the maintenance during the quiet time? This is the hard truth of the plateau. The reason you aren't moving forward might be that you aren't yet the person who can sustain the next level of success. This is a direct challenge to your pride. It is an invitation to stop lying to yourself about why you are where you are. We love to blame the economy, we love to blame our upbringing, and we love to blame the season, but the season is neutral. The plateau is just a piece of ground. It is what you do while you are standing on that ground that determines whether it becomes your grave or your launching pad. Don't rush to the next video, and don't rush to find an easy answer that makes you feel good. I want you to feel the weight of these questions. I want you to feel the discomfort of realizing that you might have been wasting your quiet season, because that discomfort is the only thing that can break the spell of adequacy. I'll be leaving those moments of quiet for you at the end of this message, and I want you to use them to conduct this audit with total, brutal honesty. You see, most people will listen to this and feel a temporary spark of motivation, and then they will go right back to the same habits and the same associations that kept them on the plateau in the first place. They will choose the comfort of their current misery over the effort of a new discipline. But I am betting that you are different. I am betting that there is something in you that is tired of being fine. There is something in you that knows you were designed for more than just a respectable stagnation. But to get to that more, you have to pass through the fire of self-examination. You have to be willing to look at the stock clerk version of your life and decide that it's time to close the store and move on to bigger things. Are you willing to be the person who does the work in the dark so that you can eventually stand in the light? Or are you just waiting for the world to change so that you don't have to change yourself? As we bring this conversation to a close, I want you to take a deep breath and realize that you are exactly where you need to be. There is a profound dignity in your struggle, and there is a hidden beauty in the stillness that you have been so afraid of. You have spent so much of your life measuring your worth by the noise you make and the speed at which you run, but I am here to tell you that the stars don't make a sound, and yet they guide the traveler home. Your value is not a variable that changes with your bank balance or your social standing. Your value is a constant, a flame that was lit long before you ever learned how to worry. This quiet season is not a void that needs to be filled. It is a sanctuary that needs to be honored. It is the place where you stop being a servant to your circumstances and start being the master of your soul. You don't need another seminar, you don't need another book, and you certainly don't need another person to tell you that you are enough. What you need is the courage to believe it in the silence. I want you to look forward into the coming months, not with the anxiety of a man who is falling behind, but with the calm confidence of a woman who knows that her roots are finding water. The wind will blow again, the opportunities will knock again, the world will start its noisy demand for your attention once more. But when that happens, you will be different. You will be a person of substance, a person who has sat with the darkness and found the light within themselves. You will be able to stand in the middle of the storm and not be moved, because you have already mastered the stillness. This is the strength that no one can take from you. This is the wisdom that cannot be marketed or sold in a bottle. It is the quiet, steady power of a human being who has decided that they will no longer be a stranger to their own heart. You have the seeds of greatness inside of you, but remember that the seed does not grow by being watched or by being shouted at. It grows because it is planted in the rich, dark silence of the earth and left to fulfill its destiny. We are about to enter that time for silence and reflection that I promised you at the beginning of our time together. This is the most important part of our meeting today. The words I have spoken are just the invitation. The silence is the event. I'm going to stop talking and the screen will go quiet, but I'm asking you as a friend and as a mentor, do not click away. Do not rush to the next distraction. Do not let the habits of the majority rob you of this moment. You owe it to yourself to sit in this stillness for just a few minutes and let these ideas settle into the soil of your mind. Let the questions we ask today echo in the chambers of your heart. There is a message waiting for you in the quiet, a whisper that has been trying to get your attention for a very long time. It is the voice of the person you are meant to become, and it is calling you home. Before I leave you to the silence, I want to give you one last thought to carry with you. The seasons of life are not a circle that returns you to where you started. They are a spiral that leads you higher with every turn. You are not the same person you were when we began this talk, and you will not be the same person when the silence ends. You are a work in progress, a masterpiece in the making, and the architect is currently at work in the quiet. Trust him, trust the process. And most of all, trust that the harvest you are waiting for is already on its way, growing in the invisible places where only faith can see it. You have the power to change everything, but that power begins with the honesty of this moment. I will see you in the next season, but for now, I will leave you with the quiet. When the music fades and the silence begins, I want you to ask yourself one final deep question that will stay with you long after this video is over. If the world never gave you another round of applause, if the stage went dark and the crowds went home, would you still have enough respect for the person standing in the mirror to keep reaching for the stars?